Need advice quickly. I got myself in a big mess. BC, I dated his friend, now he wants to divorce. I am in a very big mess because of my stupidity and desire for something new. I didn't know that he would find out about my abomination. He would actually want to end our union. I love him, and I actually don't see myself marrying another man, but him. What I did is ungodly and disgusting, but why would the consequences or karma deal with only me? Why am I the only one suffering while I was not alone in this whole thing? I know I am the one who is married, and I should have respected the vows that I had made in front of the Lord and our guests, especially our families. It was so evil of me to go against my vows and commit adultery while I am married. But it doesn't change the fact that I was not the only one performing the sinister. I dated his friend, so if he was to cut ties with me, he should also cut ties with his friends. But life is never fair on women's rights. All the guys' friendships have codes, right? I think they call it a bro code, a code whereby you vow not to either date or get into an intimate relationship with your friend's partner or sibling. The guy that I had cheated with had broken the code, but nothing was happening to him, while I was suffering the consequences of the actions that we had made. I really need help on this one. I am somehow confused, but I also want to fix my marriage with my husband. So my husband, Tony, male 35, and I, female 33, met at a mutual friend's wedding. Well, more like at my cousin's wedding. He was a friend of my cousin's husband. We were sitting at the same table. He was and still is a very handsome, clean, and sophisticated gentleman. I remember on the day we met, I had worn a very long dress, so it somehow tripped me and I almost fell. Imagine falling in front of all the people that were in that hall. It would have been such a bummer and embarrassing. So Tony luckily caught me beforehand since I was trying to stand when I tripped, and he was sitting next to me. His touch gave me goosebumps that I didn't even know I had. Not to mention his soft hands. It felt so right when they touched me. Even his gentle gesture was something else. What I felt for Tony was what I can call love at first sight. He didn't try much or said many words, but his gentleness and handsomeness drew me to him. During that day, we were talking and laughing. It was really nice to be with him. He was in good company. He made me forget about anything else. It felt like nothing was existing except for him and I. I even forgot that we were at my cousin's wedding. I had found a friend and also a lover there. I thought I had found the one my soul needed. He was my answered prayers, his gentleness, a big dreamer and a successful man who still had goals to be more successful than he was. I love a man who knows what they want and makes every means to get it. Mind you, at that time I had a plan of starting my own internet cafe and coffee shop, and with Tony's knowledge and skills in IT, I knew I had gained resources to help me start a successful internet cafe. It seemed like it was a blessing in disguise, you know. It felt like with Tony by my side, I would have everything figured out, and it would be successful with his intelligence on board. Since then, we became friends. He taught me a lot about IT that I didn't know. Well, I wanted to start an internet cafe because we didn't have one in Sicily, only in big cities, which was far from where I was staying. So I wanted to help my community get easy access on the internet without even having to go to the big city for it. I made it specifically for students so that they can have easy access to the internet and be able to find school projects information in it without having to waste more money to get to the big city to get it. Tony helped me start the internet cafe, which was very sweet and generous of him. I was glad for the service that he had delivered. He started being a computer tutor. Each and every minute that I would spend with him was always priceless. I still melted in his touch and his voice. It had that kind of thing that makes you feel like you have been given some voodoo, or he uses voodoo to make my heart palpitate. Months later, Tony declared his love for me. Well, I had already felt something for him, and I was falling pretty hard for him, but I couldn't tell him. I was protecting my heart from being rejected and my ego and pride. He told me how much he enjoys spending time with me and thanked the opportunity that I had given of trusting him with my community children and students. Well, Tony was not from Sicily. He had first come for the wedding, which was the first day that we had first met. So Tony and I dated for 2 years. We were still in the phase of knowing each other very well before we tied the knot. It was the best option, and it gave us time to learn more about each other. I was happy with the fact that Tony was not rushing to any marriage. Yes, we were committed to each other. About 1.5 years later, he popped the biggest question. My love for him kept escalating. I don't know if I was getting obsessed with Tony, but I couldn't live without him. Even if he was not around or we were not talking either on the call or text, I would feel like he was up to no good. You know when you try to contact your partner and his phone keeps either putting you on hold or gets to voicemail at the same time? I was somehow insecure and I didn't want any woman to even see my Tony's side. He was mine and mine alone. Well, Tony was residing in Agrigento in the southern coast of Sicily, while my home was in Piazza Armerina, which was about 1 hour and some minutes drive apart. So he would go home for like a week, then come to see me whenever he was free, or I would go to his city when I was not busy. Our love was like a flower. It kept blossoming every minute that we would spend with each other or when we were communicating. Months later, well, we had gotten 2 years of dating, so we got married on the day of our dating anniversary. You know, it's really nice and fulfilling having to spend the rest of your life with your favorite person who is also your partner. We got to share all our flaws, our dreams, our future, and plans. After getting married, we moved to Cefalù, where we wanted to start our own family. We were living the dream, and I couldn't be much happier. I mean, why wouldn't you be happy when you have been given a chance to spend the rest of your life with someone who you fell in love with on the first day that you saw him? I fell in love with Tony the day we had first met. Deep down, I knew that he was my soulmate and my caregiver. He didn't have to try hard to make me happy and feel complete. He knew how to make me feel better during my dull days. He always knew how to put a smile on my face. But you know, when I was to be asked why I cheated or dated his friend, I don't know how I would answer that question because I have no response for it. Anyway, time passed. Tony started getting too busy to spend time with me. Yes, the intimate moments were still fine, but I needed his attention and I wanted to spend more time with him. I mean, we had stayed far away from each other for almost 2 years when we were still dating. Ever since we got married, we had spent a couple of times together. We would go out, eat out, or go to play games. My relationship or my marriage with Tony was somehow great because we would always allow ourselves to be young again. Playing games, going out on ice cream dates, attending exhibitions together. We were stress-free and carefree. It was like we were in our very own dimension, living with our rules. So one sunny Saturday, Tony had left the house to buy meat. He had asked me to prepare something since his friends were coming over to celebrate his other friend's arrival in Italy. I have heard that he was residing in Los Angeles, LA, but now he had relocated to this side. So I prepared everything and Tony's other friends started coming with their partners. Of course, everyone was having a good time up until the man of the day arrived. You know when someone says, "I feel like I am looking at Jesus himself." Well, that was what I felt. His body structure, cleanly trimmed mustache, his sexy hazel blue eyes. I was taken aback by the guy. He was really handsome. You know, the kind of handsome Leonardo DiCaprio. That was how he looked. His eyes looked naughty though, and I love being naughty. The guy was not at my wedding with Tony. I had heard that he was working since he was a doctor. The guy was introduced as Bradley, male, 33. His appearance was charming and mind-blowing. You know when you see someone for the first time and automatically feel attracted to them? That was how I felt with Bradley. I was not attracted to him because of his handsomeness only, but I would sometimes imagine myself being intimate with him. I imagined myself and him riding and grinding each other. My imaginations went wild to a point that I would see him exploring my whole body, his pinkish, sexy lips kissing every fiber of my body. I know it was wrong of me to drool and think like that for my husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. I mean, the guy was everything and more. I just wanted or craved for only one night with him, then it would have been enough for me. I am a witch and a loose cannon, I know. But how was I supposed to stop my mind and desire to think about the poor guy? Mind you, that time he was going to be staying with us for some time up until he gets his own place to stay. So imagine the torture and pressure that I would be feeling. I know it's sinister to have these kinds of thoughts for your husband's friend, but I couldn't help it. Only one night with him was going to solve everything. As much as I love my handsome, smart husband, Bradley was the type of guy that you can only have a crush on and date because he was too extreme. His handsomeness, the way he was speaking, would make any woman drop their panties for him. 1 week later, we were still staying with Bradley. Well, most of the time I was with him in the house. He is a very cool guy, carefree, talkative, and funny. He easily adjusted to the new environment and it was going well for him. I had seen him doing workouts a few times in the morning. His abs were something else. I felt like I would touch them. I had so many dirty thoughts for the poor guy, and I really wanted to stop thinking like that with my husband's friend. During that week, I remembered that I was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for both me and him. He came in wearing only a very tight vest and jogging shorts. He just stayed with me in the kitchen, keeping me company. Only if he knew that his company was a destruction to me. He started asking me about my relationship or my marriage with Tony, wanting to know how it was. I told him what he needed to hear and found it enough to share. I couldn't tell him everything about my marriage. Yes, he was my husband's friend, but I couldn't tell him everything that is going on between Tony and I. Mind you, that time, Ton and I had been arguing a lot lately about him being always absent even when his friend is around. That led to a very heated and biggest argument. My husband and I were slowly drifting apart. Yes, our connection and love would always be there, but we were drifting apart. I felt like he was trying to push me away because even when he is under stress and pressure, he no longer confides in me as his wife. I would sometimes wonder who he confides to if he was shutting me out the way he was doing. It really hurt me having to beg every day for your partner to give you the attention that you need. The more I was spending time with Bradley, the more we got closer. I ended up confiding in him about Tony's behavior because it was really shocking to me. I didn't know who to talk to, so Bradley was the only person who was willing to listen to me vent about my marriage. I know I shouldn't have done that, but what I was supposed to do. Because I couldn't keep my sadness and heartbreaking moments inside my chest. I was going to burst, and a lot would have been destroyed. So Bradley prepared snacks for us, especially marshmallows and hot chocolate, which were my favorite when I was not feeling well or feeling down. I appreciated the time and ear that Bradley had led me and made me vent in him. I needed to offload, my chest was too heavy. As I was crying like that, Bradley hugged me and promised me that he would speak to Tony. Since Tony had been so distant, especially after the argument that we had, he started going to work early in the morning and came back late at night. Bradley's hug was actually what I needed. You know, the kind of hug that is warm and welcoming, the one that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. So as we were still hugging, I found myself kissing him. We kissed, and things got out of hand. A kiss escalated. We ended up doing the deed in the lounge. Mind you, that time I had forgotten that Tony had recently planted CCTV cameras in the house. I had completely forgotten about that, and Bradley didn't even know about it. Since that indescribable day, Bradley and I continued seeing each other. Sometimes we would get intimate in my marital home, while some other time we would go to a nearest hotel to book for the day. We couldn't book for the night because my husband was going to be suspicious. We did our thing carefully because if Tony was to find us, we both knew that we were going to suffer the consequences, and I would be left a divorced woman. Bradley was giving it to me so sweet and gentle. He was very explosive. He knew how to explore a woman's body and make her feel foreign and end up speaking in tongues. He knew every spot to touch to make me submit to his commands. Well, he loved gentle, rough, intimate moments. I didn't even know that there was actually gentle, rough type of intimate sessions. I learned a lot from Bradley, even some new positions that someone would think are extreme, but they are very enjoyable and nice. I was not a submissive wife to my husband, but with Bradley, I was submissive without even thinking twice. My husband loved missionary intimacy, while Bradley loved exploring new positions, and I learned a lot. I mean, my own husband was a 1 or 2 rounds type of person, then he would get tired and fall asleep. Bradley, on the other hand, was a dragon. He was spitting fire when it comes to intimacy. He would make you go all night, and even wake you in the morning. He would always leave my private area burning and tired. The guy knew his thing, and up until today I complimented him. He is the best. My relationship with Bradley went on and on for like 9 months. We were still careful, but Bradley didn't want us to be private. He wanted us to be seen in public as dating people, and that was not what I had wanted. As much as I was enjoying the intimacy and everything that Bradley was offering, but I loved my husband so much. I wouldn't just leave my husband for an intimacy freak like Bradley. He is doing me good and exploring my body the way I had been desiring, but I wouldn't divorce my husband to be with him. He didn't understand that our relationship was an intimate relationship only and nothing more or less. But the poor guy had caught feelings, and that was not what we had agreed on. It was purely and strictly intimacy. Weeks later, I ended my affair with Bradley. I felt like I had destroyed my marriage and went against my wedding vows. I shouldn't have allowed temptations and desires to control me like that. I should have respected myself and my marriage with Tony. Bradley had started to catch feelings, and it was not looking good because we would sometimes argue about his obsessive behavior. I don't know why he was suddenly obsessed because we had an agreement of no strings attached, but he decided to attach strings on our thing and the whole thing got crushed. I went back to my marital home. I wished to change the location and buy a new home for Tony and myself because the house held so many memories. Even the memory of myself committing adultery for the first time was in my marital home. I felt like I had disrespected my husband in the worst way possible, and there was no way to undo what I had done. I know I had wanted or craved for Bradley for at least one night, but it shouldn't have escalated like it did. And guess what happened? I was F***ed. Few days later, Tony was back at home. Well, he was working at home most of the time. The guilt was eating me up like a deadly disease. I had tried to act normal around my husband, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew something was wrong. I couldn't bear looking at him and acting like a happy wife while I knew what I had done. Tony, being as nonchalant as ever, didn't seem to notice anything amiss. The guilt and anxiety of my abomination grew with each passing day. The following week, it was a Monday afternoon. I was watering the garden when our family lawyer came to the house. I was so confused by why Hamilton, our lawyer, would come to our house. I knew that he wouldn't come if it was not important or urgent, so I started getting palpitations. My mind drifted to Tony. I had thought something had happened to him. I couldn't bear to see myself being a widow. My mind was busy taking me to places that I didn't want to see myself in. Hamilton asked to speak with me and told me that it was important. I knew that he wouldn't leave his specious and fancy office and come to my house if it wasn't important. So we went inside and he gave me an envelope. He told me that he was sent by Tony and that I should read everything properly first before signing. Another thing he told me was that I was free to fight and try to save whatever that would be lost after signing, but he didn't think fighting would be a good idea. The way he was speaking in riddles, I got conscious and ended up opening the envelope. When I opened the envelope, I couldn't believe my eyes. I felt like my heart was stepped on by an elephant and my body was hit by a truck. I was lost in words. I told Hamilton that I wouldn't let Tony divorce me without a fight and I was not going to sign those divorce papers. I didn't know why Tony would want to divorce me. That time, the abomination that I had done didn't even cross my mind. I kept trying to sort the puzzles and asking myself, why would Tony suddenly want to divorce me? Few days later, Tony and I were in the magistrate's office with both our lawyers. I couldn't just let him take everything away from me. I was asked to state why I didn't want to sign the divorce papers. I told them that I couldn't let Tony, my husband, leave me without any explanation on why he would wake up and decide that he wanted to divorce me and take our home. And I couldn't just let him break my heart like that. When it was Tony's turn to speak or defend himself, he said the worst hurtful things to me. He called me names and told me that he was regretting ever marrying me. If he knew I was a witch that I was, he wouldn't even bother looking my way the day we met. He was furious to see that even temple veins were popping. He looked murderous, and he wasn't the Tony that I had been married to. He then dropped a huge bomb at me that I had long forgotten about. He told me that he knew about my affair with Bradley, his friend, and that I had been seen going to the hotel with Bradley when he was at work. I couldn't believe how he got the information. He told me that he had been acting like everything is normal and okay, but he knew all the dirt that I had done, so he wants nothing to do with me, and I should just go back home and continue running my internet cafe and a coffee shop. I denied every allegation that he was accusing me of. I even denied being in any relationship with Bradley. While I was still fighting, screaming, and kicking, Tony gave Hamilton a USB, and there it was. All the evidence of my abomination was there. I didn't know what to say nor do. I had no way back. I didn't even know how to defend myself. It was really humiliating and embarrassing. I tried to apologize to Tony, but he wanted to hear nothing from me. I had no other choice but to obey his request. I went back home and signed the papers. My heart was shuttered. Even today, when I think of everything, my heart breaks. I miss Tony so much, and I regret everything that I have done. What should I do to get my husband back? I can't let him go like that. I need advice quickly.